Hi, and welcome to Figma 101. In this course, you will learn the very basics of Figma. You'll learn how to navigate the interface. You'll learn how to create artboards and frames. You'll learn how to create styles and components. And then finally, once you've sort of learned how to do all of those things, you will have, at the end, your very own e-commerce dashboard. This course is really for beginners, so there's no prerequisite. It can be for someone like an aspiring UI UX designer. Maybe it's for a front-end developer that wants to learn a little bit about design software, or you could just be someone that's curious about what Figma is. Either way, anyone can use it. So it's an exciting and sort of easy software to use. And so just if you don't know what Figma is already, Figma is a UI UX software that's cloud-based. And it's kind of a software that you can use to create digital products. So anything from an app to a responsive website to a desktop app. You can really use it for anything like that. So now that we've sort of introduced what it is, let's get started. So you can see here that I have this Figma icon on my desktop, and all I need to do is I need to double click. This might take a while to load, just because of the software, but just hang in tight. Once your software has loaded, you will see this screen here that says Welcome to Figma. What you'll need to do here is you'll actually need to create your own account. Don't worry, it's actually free, so that's one great thing about Figma is it's a free software. So I will say pause the video and create your own account. All right, hopefully by now you have logged in and created your own account. And once you've logged in, you will see a screen or a window that looks like this. It has a bunch of, this is kind of the main Figma page. And I will just go over this really quickly. On your left, you have your file menu. This just kind of tells you, where all your files are. You can see here, this is your recent files. You have your plugins, draft files. You can even search files and other things like that. And then this little symbol up here, these are your notifications. And then if you go kind of over to this section, you'll see here that you can sort and change the view. You can do list view or tile view or grid view. And then down here you have your help and resources page. And that's kind of your main Figma interface. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a file and then go over the project sort of page in the interface, which is what you'll primarily be using the software in. So the way that you actually create a file is there's two ways on this window. There's these two plus signs. There's one here next to drafts, and then there's another one up here next to your export or import button. You can click either of those and create a new file. I forgot to add that one thing about Figma is that you can use Figma on a desktop, but you can also use Figma in a browser, which is pretty cool. So I'll just show that really quick before we go in. So you can see here that I've actually now opened Figma in my browser, and the two actually work with one another. So anytime you create a file here or anytime you create a file there, since you're logged in with your account, you'll be able to see any of those files. So it's pretty nice. We have to use Figma on the desktop in this software because we are running a mirrored desktop, but normally, you can just use it in the browser. But it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. So let's go back to the actual desktop app and let's create a new file. So we'll click here, create a new file. To wait for it to load. And once we've created a new file, You can kind of see the interface here. I'll go over it a little bit. So let's start with the toolbar. The toolbar is up here at the top, has a lot of different things in it. First off, you have your kind of Figma options here, so your file and edit and object, plugins and things like that. You have your frames. It's your frame and slice tool. You have your shape tool, so if you click this, you can kind of add any shape you want. Your pen tool and pencil tool, that's if you want to get a little bit of vectoring going on. You have your text tool, your hand tool, and then your comment tool. And then up here you have your name. Right now it says untitled. You can actually click on that and name it something. We'll name it my first file. So now you can see it's up here, it's up here. And then also, like I said again, you can actually go in your browser. So you can see here that I clicked on my browser and my file showed up here. So it's pretty awesome. Going back to the interface, this is where you would see profiles. So right now I am the only person that has this file or that's using this file, but if you actually end up sharing this file, sometimes you'll see other people's little icons here at the top. So like I said before, it's a desktop software. So, and a sharing cloud-based software, so you can actually share it with multiple people and they can all look at the files. Here is your share button. So if I click on that, you can see that I can share it in many different ways. We'll go over this later, but I'm just kind of showing you the window here. And then you have your preview. So preview or present, you can use this if you've created a wireframe or prototype, or if you just want to show someone your screens without having to show them your entire design file. Then you have your viewing options, so our zoom in and zoom out, our layout grids, rulers, just really anything that pertains to the document as a whole. You can find it here. I tend to use these a lot now, such as layout grids, rulers, but they can be really helpful if you're trying to align things very precisely. On this right side, you have your inspector menu. This inspector menu kind of tells you details about an object that you have created. So for instance, if say I draw a rectangle, if I go up here to my shape section or my shape tools, and say I draw a rectangle, you can see here, I've drawn a rectangle. Once I did that, now you can see that there's certain details about that rectangle that I can view. I can also edit all of that stuff. So, if I want to change the color, you can see here that I've changed the color. If I want to add a stroke, I can add a stroke. Just different details. Effect such as drop shadow or layer blur or background blur. Just anything that you want to do that will sort of edit an object. And then also under this section, there's prototype and code. So code is kind of a neat feature of Figma that a lot of other softwares don't have. It actually tells you the code of like a certain object. That's pretty nice, especially for front-end developers. So if you are a front-end developer and you're learning about this software, just know that you can go here and this will tell you the different sort of properties of that object or component. It's great for something like that. Down here, if you ever need a little bit of help or resources, you can always click this button. And then finally, we have our layer menu over here on the left side. You have, if you create a layer, such as a frame, for instance, I'll just create one really quick. You can see here that it's now showing up in my layer. You can also, create another object there and it will kind of show you where it is. Um, and so it's kind of your way of knowing where your objects are. And then assets, we'll go over that a little bit later, but that's kind of where you would find all of your system components. And then finally, if you have a file that's a bit more complicated or requires you to have another page, you can create multiple pages within these files. So for instance, say I want to create, if I wanted to have a separate page for my high fidelity mockup versus my, my lower fidelity wireframe mockup, I might want to differentiate those two. So I would label these however I want, something like this. That way all of my files within that project are kind of in the same project, within the same file type. So that's pretty much it for the interface. Let's just do one more thing before we pause the video. Let's actually upload the file that I have created. So I have created a template for you to use throughout this project that will make it easier to do things. So what I want you to do is actually go to your Figma dashboard, your normal dashboard page, and I actually want you to go at the top here and click import. And I want you to find the file on your desktop that says Figma 101. So it should be here, Figma 101. And I want you to open it. And it might take a second to open it. So you can see here, once I've imported a file, it will show me that it's importing. And I want you to kind of practice importing. I want you to practice creating new files and really just exploring the interface. So before you move on to the next video, try to do all of those things that we kind of talked about. Just get familiar with the interface. Once you start using these files, you'll become more familiar with how everything works, but it's just kind of nice to mess around with all the buttons.